The morning rain drummed against the office windows as Rebecca Martinez watched her colleagues hurry past the bus stop outside, their expensive cars gleaming in the corporate parking lot. She clutched her worn messenger bag tighter, the same bag she had carried for 3 years to her job at Sterling Financial Group, one of Chicago's most prestigious investment firms. What her coworkers didn't know as they smirked and whispered about her daily bus rides was that Rebecca owned something far more valuable than any luxury sedan in that parking lot. She secretly owned Chicago Metro Transit, the very bus company that carried thousands of passengers across the city every single day. Hi everyone, I'm Tina, and welcome back to our little corner where real stories touch hearts and change lives. Today I'm bringing you a story that will completely transform how you think about success, judgment, and the incredible power of staying humble even when you hold all the cards. You're about to witness one of the most satisfying moments of justice I've ever shared, where years of workplace mockery come crashing down in the most unexpected way imaginable. This isn't just about a woman taking the bus. This is about a brilliant mind who built an empire while everyone around her was too busy looking down on her to see the truth. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end because the revelation will leave you speechless. If stories like this inspire you as much as they inspire me, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our family of people who believe that real strength often wears the simplest disguises. Now let me take you into Rebecca's world. Rebecca had inherited Chicago Metro Transit from her grandfather, Antonio Martinez, a humble immigrant who had started with a single bus route in 1962 and slowly built it into the city's largest private transit company. When Antonio passed away 5 years ago, he left specific instructions that Rebecca should maintain complete anonymity about her ownership, continuing to work her regular job and live modestly while overseeing the company through a carefully constructed trust. He believed that real leaders needed to understand every level of society, from the passengers who depended on reliable transportation to get to work each day, to the corporate executives who looked down on public transit users without understanding their struggles and dignity. The irony was almost painful to witness. Every morning, Rebecca would board bus route 47 at exactly 7:15 a.m., showing her monthly pass to drivers who had no idea they were greeting their actual boss. She would sit quietly in her usual seat near the middle, listening to conversations about delayed buses, broken air conditioning, or schedule changes that needed attention. These rides had become her informal market research, giving her insights into passenger needs that no boardroom meeting could provide. Meanwhile, her colleagues at Sterling Financial would arrive in their BMWs and Mercedes, often commenting loudly about the poor people who had to rely on public transportation. The mockery had started subtly during her first month at Sterling Financial. Rebecca had been hired as a senior financial analyst, her Harvard MBA and impressive track record speaking for themselves during the interview process. But when word spread that she took the bus to work every day, the whispers began. At first, it was just curious glances and quiet comments about how someone with her salary could afford a car. Then it escalated to more direct questions about her financial planning skills, with some colleagues suggesting that maybe she wasn't as financially savvy as her resume indicated. James Morrison, the office's self-proclaimed king of success, led most of the comments about Rebecca's transportation choices. James drove a brand new Tesla Model S, and never missed an opportunity to discuss its features, its environmental benefits, and how it reflected his forward-thinking mindset. He would often park next to the window where Rebecca's desk was located, making sure she could see him getting out of his impressive vehicle each morning. During team meetings, James would make casual references to car payments, insurance costs, and the tax benefits of leasing luxury vehicles, always glancing in Rebecca's direction to see if his comments were landing. The breaking point came during the annual company retreat at the Fairmont Hotel downtown. Sterling Financial had rented the entire conference center for a weekend of team-building exercises, strategic planning sessions, and what management liked to call relationship building. But what everyone knew was really an excuse for the partners to show off their wealth and status. Rebecca had taken the bus to the hotel, walking the final 3 blocks from the nearest stop, while her colleagues arrived in a parade of expensive cars that the hotel valets handled with reverent care. During the welcome cocktail hour, James raised his glass for an impromptu toast that would change everything. "Here's to the Sterling Financial team," he announced loudly, his voice carrying across the elegant ballroom. "We're all here because we understand success, because we know how to make smart financial decisions, and because we've earned our place among Chicago's elite." His eyes found Rebecca across the room, and his smile turned predatory. "Well, most of us have figured out the basics of personal finance anyway. Some of us are still taking the bus like college students." The laughter that followed felt like ice water in Rebecca's veins. She watched as her colleagues, people she had worked alongside for 3 years, people she had helped with complex financial analyses, people she had considered friends, joined in James's mockery. Sarah Chen, who had borrowed Rebecca's expertise on merger calculations just last week, giggled behind her hand. David Park, who had asked Rebecca for advice on his own investment portfolio, shook his head with amusement. Even Patricia Williams, the senior partner who had praised Rebecca's work on the Johnson account, smiled indulgently at James's performance. Rebecca set down her wine glass and excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment to process what had just happened. As she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her simple black dress that she had bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack, she thought about her grandfather's words about dignity and humility. Antonio had always said that real power didn't need to announce itself, that the strongest people were often those who chose to blend in rather than stand out. But standing there, listening to the continued laughter from the ballroom, Rebecca wondered if her grandfather's philosophy was simply enabling her colleagues' cruelty. The next Monday morning brought an unseasonably cold October wind that cut through Rebecca's wool coat as she waited at the bus stop. She had spent the entire weekend replaying the humiliation from the company retreat, analyzing every laugh and whispered comment like she would examine a complex financial statement. The numbers didn't lie, and neither did the expressions she had seen on her colleagues' faces when James delivered his cutting remarks about her bus riding habits. What stung most wasn't the mockery itself, but the realization that people she had respected and supported professionally saw her daily choice as evidence of personal failure rather than personal preference. Bus Route 47 arrived precisely on schedule, driven by Miguel Santos, a 20-year veteran of Chicago Metro Transit who had become something of a fixture in Rebecca's morning routine. Miguel always greeted passengers with genuine warmth, knew regular riders by name, and maintained his vehicle with pride that went far beyond the job description. Rebecca had read his employment file during quarterly reviews, knowing that Miguel supported 3 children and sent money to his elderly parents in Mexico, all while maintaining one of the highest customer satisfaction ratings in the entire transit system. The contrast between Miguel's dignity and her colleagues' arrogance couldn't have been sharper. "Morning, Miss Rebecca," Miguel said as she climbed the steps, his smile as reliable as his punctual arrival. "How was your weekend?" She managed a genuine smile for perhaps the first time since Friday night, realizing that Miguel's simple courtesy meant more to her than all the expensive cocktails and forced networking at the company retreat. "It was enlightening, Miguel. How about yours?" Miguel's face brightened as he began telling her about his daughter's soccer game, his pride evident as he described her winning goal while expertly navigating morning traffic. The bus filled with its usual mix of commuters, each person carrying their own story of resilience and determination. Rebecca recognized most of the regular passengers: Maria, the nurse who worked double shifts at Northwestern Memorial Hospital; Robert, the security guard who was studying for his engineering degree through night classes; Jennifer, the single mother who cleaned office buildings before her children woke up for school. These were the people her colleagues dismissed as unsuccessful, yet Rebecca saw more real strength and integrity in this single bus ride than she had witnessed in 3 years of Sterling Financial's partnership meetings. As the bus approached the financial district, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text message from her assistant at Chicago Metro Transit. "Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. today. The City Council wants to discuss the new electric bus proposal." Rebecca smiled, remembering how James had bragged about his Tesla's environmental benefits just days before. If he only knew that Rebecca was spearheading the largest electric vehicle initiative in Chicago's history, converting over 400 buses to clean energy and reducing the city's carbon footprint more than 1,000 electric cars combined. The Sterling Financial Building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun like a beacon of corporate ambition. Rebecca watched her colleagues emerging from their expensive vehicles, designer coffee cups in hand, hurrying toward the elevator banks with the self-important urgency of people who believed their own press releases about their indispensability. James Morrison's Tesla occupied its premium parking spot, still gleaming from what appeared to be a fresh wash and detail. Rebecca wondered if James realized that the bus she rode every day transported more people in a single trip than his car would carry in an entire month. The morning staff meeting proceeded with its usual mix of project updates, client reports, and competitive posturing. Rebecca presented her analysis of the Henderson portfolio with quiet competence, watching James check his phone repeatedly while she explained complex derivative calculations that would save the client over $2 million in tax liabilities. When she finished, the room offered polite applause, but she could see in their expressions that they were still processing Friday night's bus revelations, still wondering how someone so financially clueless could produce such sophisticated work. During the coffee break, Rebecca overheard Sarah Chen talking to David Park near the espresso machine. I feel bad for Rebecca," Sarah was saying, her voice carrying the kind of false sympathy that cut deeper than outright cruelty. "She's obviously very smart, but she just doesn't understand how to manage money properly. Taking the bus in Chicago? In winter? It's like she's sabotaging her own career image." David nodded thoughtfully, adding his own analysis. "Maybe someone should talk to her about financial planning. We work at an investment firm. How does it look when one of our analysts can't afford a car?" Rebecca stirred her coffee slowly, letting their words wash over her while she calculated numbers in her head. Chicago Metro Transit's annual revenue exceeded $800 million. Her personal net worth, including inherited assets and investment returns, placed her comfortably in the top 1% of American wealth holders. The irony was so complete it felt almost fictional. Yet here she stood, listening to people debate her financial competence while she owned assets that dwarfed their combined portfolios. The afternoon brought a conference call with the Henderson client, a family foundation that managed charitable giving for one of Chicago's oldest philanthropic families. Rebecca had been working on their account for 6 months, developing investment strategies that would maximize their ability to fund education initiatives throughout the city. As she explained her recommendations, she thought about the scholarships that Chicago Metro Transit funded for children of transportation workers, the job training programs they supported, and the community development projects they quietly sponsored throughout Chicago's underserved neighborhoods. Listen, I need to pause here for just a moment because I know some of you watching this story are feeling that familiar pain of being underestimated, of having people make assumptions about your worth based on surface appearances. I want you to know that your story matters, that your struggles and choices have meaning, and that sometimes the quietest victories are the most powerful ones. If this story is speaking to your heart, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and become part of our family here. Share in the comments a time when someone completely misjudged you. I read every single comment, and your experiences help me choose the stories that need to be told. Now, let's see what happens when Rebecca's world is about to change in ways her colleagues never saw coming. The following morning brought news that would set everything in motion. Rebecca arrived at her office to find an urgent email from Patricia Williams requesting an immediate meeting about a potential new client. The subject line read, "Major Transportation Opportunity, Confidential," and Rebecca's heart rate quickened as she realized what this might mean. For months, Sterling Financial had been pursuing a contract with Chicago Metro Transit to manage their pension fund investments, a deal worth over $50 million in assets that would significantly boost the firm's reputation and revenue. Patricia's corner office overlooked the financial district, its floor-to-ceiling windows providing a commanding view of the city that reinforced her position as Sterling Financial's managing partner. When Rebecca knocked on the partially open door, Patricia looked up from a stack of documents with the kind of focused intensity that meant serious business was about to be discussed. "Rebecca, come in and close the door." I have something important to discuss with you, and I need your complete discretion about what I'm about to share. Rebecca settled into the leather chair across from Patricia's massive desk, noting the Chicago Metro Transit logo on several of the documents scattered across the workspace. Patricia leaned forward conspiratorially, her voice dropping to the tone she reserved for the firm's most significant opportunities. Chicago Metro Transit has invited us to submit a proposal for managing their employee pension fund. This is exactly the kind of institutional client we've been targeting, and if we land this contract, it could open doors to other municipal transportation contracts across the Midwest. The irony hit Rebecca like a physical force. She was being asked to help Sterling Financial pitch services to the company she actually owned, while her colleagues remained completely unaware of her true identity. Patricia continued outlining the opportunity, explaining that Chicago Metro Transit was particularly interested in working with a firm that understood the transportation industry and could demonstrate cultural sensitivity to the needs of working-class employees. They want to meet with our team next Friday for a preliminary presentation. I'm putting you in charge of the financial analysis because your work is always impeccable. Rebecca managed to maintain her professional composure, while her mind raced through the implications. She knew every detail of Chicago Metro Transit's financial position, obviously, since she received quarterly reports from the management team that ran daily operations. She also knew that the company had indeed been seeking new investment management services, but she had been planning to handle the selection process through her anonymous trust structure. Now, her own employer was competing for a contract with her own company, and she held all the cards without anyone knowing it. There's one more thing, Patricia added, her expression becoming slightly uncomfortable. The client specifically requested that we demonstrate our commitment to diversity and community understanding. They mentioned that they want to work with people who understand the daily realities of public transportation users. Patricia paused, clearly struggling with her next words. I know this might sound unusual, but I was wondering if you might have any insights into the public transportation experience. I mean, you take the bus to work, so you might have a unique perspective that could help us connect with this client. Rebecca felt a mixture of amusement and vindication at Patricia's request. After years of her colleagues viewing her bus riding as a character flaw, suddenly it was being repositioned as a valuable asset for winning business. I'd be happy to contribute insights about the passenger experience, Rebecca replied carefully, though I think you'll find that public transportation users are far more sophisticated and diverse than most people assume. The stereotype of buses being only for people who can't afford cars is quite outdated. Patricia nodded eagerly, clearly relieved that Rebecca wasn't offended by the request. Exactly the kind of perspective we need. Can you prepare a section for the presentation about passenger demographics and needs? Nothing too detailed, just enough to show that we understand their customer base. Rebecca agreed, already planning how she would present accurate information about Chicago Metro Transit's ridership without revealing her inside knowledge. The rest of the week passed in a blur of presentation preparation, with Rebecca working harder than anyone else on a pitch to win business from her own company. She crafted financial projections based on publicly available information, developed investment strategies that aligned with her actual goals for the pension fund, and prepared talking points about passenger advocacy that reflected her genuine commitment to transportation equity. The other team members treated her contributions with new respect, finally recognizing that her bus riding experience provided valuable insights rather than embarrassing limitations. James Morrison, meanwhile, had appointed himself as the presentation's lead speaker, despite having no direct experience with transportation clients. During the team rehearsals, he dominated the discussion with generic corporate speak about leveraging synergies and optimizing asset allocation for maximum stakeholder value. Rebecca watched him practice his opening remarks, noting how he completely missed the human element that made transportation companies different from traditional corporate clients. The key, James announced during Thursday's final rehearsal, is to show them that we understand their business model and can help them think bigger about their financial strategies. These transportation companies are usually pretty unsophisticated about investment management, so we need to educate them about modern portfolio theory and advanced risk management techniques. Rebecca bit her tongue, knowing that Chicago Metro Transit's investment committee included former executives from Goldman Sachs and McKinsey, along with PhD economists who specialized in municipal finance. Thursday evening, Rebecca attended her monthly board meeting at Chicago Metro Transit headquarters, a modest building on the city's southwest side that stood in stark contrast to Sterling Financial's gleaming downtown tower. The conference room was filled with the kind of practical furniture and basic technology that prioritized function over form, reflecting the company's commitment to investing in service rather than appearances. Rebecca took her usual seat at the head of the table, reviewing the agenda while greeting board members who had become trusted advisors over the past 5 years. Miguel Santos was among the employee representatives on the board, having been elected by his fellow drivers to advocate for worker interests. Rebecca always appreciated Miguel's perspective during these meetings, his direct communication style and practical insights providing balance to the financial and strategic discussions. Tonight, Miguel raised concerns about the upcoming pension fund management decision, expressing hope that the new investment firm would understand the importance of stable, long-term growth rather than risky speculation with retirement security. Friday morning arrived with crisp autumn air and the kind of clear skies that made Chicago's skyline look like a postcard. Rebecca chose her outfit carefully for the presentation, selecting a navy blazer and gray slacks that struck the right balance between professional competence and accessible approachability. She knew that every detail would be scrutinized by both sides today. Her Sterling Financial colleagues would be evaluating her performance as part of their team, while the Chicago Metro Transit executives would be assessing the firm's cultural fit and understanding of their mission. The bus ride to work carried extra significance as Rebecca realized this might be one of her last trips before her double life became impossible to maintain. Miguel greeted her with his usual warmth, but today she noticed details she had previously taken for granted. The cleanliness of the vehicle, the efficiency of the route, the respectful interactions between driver and passengers. These were the results of policies she had implemented and standards she had set, yet none of her colleagues who would soon be pitching services to her company had ever bothered to experience the product firsthand. Sterling Financial's conference room had been transformed for the presentation, with fresh flowers, premium coffee service, and leather portfolios embossed with the firm's logo arranged at each seat. Patricia Williams buzzed with nervous energy as she made final adjustments to the PowerPoint slides, while James Morrison practiced his opening remarks one more time in front of the mirror. Rebecca sat quietly at the table, reviewing her notes about passenger demographics and transportation trends, preparing to discuss her own company as if she were an outside observer. At exactly 10 a.m., the Chicago Metro Transit team arrived. Rebecca's heart rate increased as she recognized the faces of people she worked with regularly. Thomas Chen, the chief financial officer, Dr. Maria Rodriguez, the director of strategic planning, and Jonathan White, the general manager who reported directly to her through the trust structure. They were accompanied by 2 board members she hadn't expected to see, Miguel Santos, representing employee interests, and Sister Catherine Murphy, a community advocate who specialized in transportation equity issues. The introductions proceeded formally, with Patricia welcoming the Chicago Metro Transit team and outlining Sterling Financial's qualifications and experience. Rebecca shook hands with each visitor, maintaining professional distance with people who knew her in a completely different context. Miguel's eyes met hers with brief confusion. He clearly recognized her as his regular passenger, but couldn't quite place why she was sitting at the Sterling Financial conference table. She smiled politely and introduced herself using her full legal name, Rebecca Martinez Santos, adding her mother's maiden name as a small misdirection. James Morrison launched into his presentation with characteristic confidence, outlining Sterling Financial's investment philosophy and track record with institutional clients. His slides were polished and his delivery was smooth, but Rebecca could see the Chicago Metro Transit team's expressions growing increasingly skeptical as he made assumptions about their sophistication level and risk tolerance. When James suggested that transportation companies typically needed education about modern investment strategies, Dr. Rodriguez's eyebrow raised in a way that Rebecca recognized as barely controlled irritation. The presentation continued with Rebecca's section about passenger demographics and community impact. She spoke passionately about the dignity and diversity of public transportation users, explaining how investment decisions for a transit company's pension fund should reflect the values and needs of working families. Her colleagues looked surprised by the depth of her knowledge and the eloquence of her delivery, while the Chicago Metro Transit team leaned forward with genuine interest. Miguel nodded approvingly as Rebecca described the financial challenges facing transportation workers and the importance of stable retirement security. Thomas Chen asked several probing questions about Sterling Financial's experience with socially responsible investing, noting that Chicago Metro Transit prioritized environmental sustainability and community development in their financial decisions. James tried to answer, but quickly revealed his lack of knowledge about ESG investing principles. Rebecca smoothly intervened, discussing how transportation companies could align their investments with their operational mission of serving urban communities. Her responses demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both financial markets and social impact investing that impressed everyone in the room. During the coffee break, Rebecca found herself in an unexpected conversation with Miguel, who had been studying her face with growing recognition. "Excuse me," he said quietly, "but you look very familiar. Do you ride bus Route 47 in the mornings?" Rebecca's stomach clenched as she realized her cover might be blown. "Yes, I do," she admitted. "You're an excellent driver, by the way, always punctual and courteous." Miguel beamed with pride. "Thank you. I love my job, and I recognize all my regular passengers. I just never expected to see one of them here in a business meeting." The conversation was interrupted by James Morrison, who had overheard enough to understand what was happening. "Wait," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the conference room. "You're telling me that Rebecca rides the same bus route that this driver operates?" His tone carried a mixture of amusement and embarrassment, as if he had discovered a coincidence that reflected poorly on Sterling Financial's professional image. What are the odds of that happening? The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably as James's comment highlighted the very class distinctions that the Chicago Metro Transit team had been evaluating. Dr. Rodriguez exchanged a meaningful look with Thomas Chen, while Sister Catherine Murphy's expression hardened with disapproval. Miguel, sensing the tension but not understanding its source, looked confused by the negative reaction to what he had intended as a friendly observation. Patricia Williams quickly tried to smooth over the moment, but the damage was already visible in the Chicago Metro Transit team's body language. Rebecca realized that this was the moment she had been unconsciously preparing for over the past 5 years. The moment when her two worlds would collide and force her to choose between continued anonymity and defending both her dignity and her company's values. The presentation was scheduled to continue for another hour, but she could see that the real decision had already been made in the minds of her visitors. The remainder of the presentation unfolded with the kind of professional politeness that masked deep discomfort on all sides. James Morrison attempted to regain control of the narrative by emphasizing Sterling Financial's exclusive client base and premium service offerings. But his words only highlighted the cultural disconnect that had become apparent to everyone in the room. Rebecca watched the Chicago Metro Transit team's faces as James described their typical clients as high-net-worth individuals who appreciate sophisticated investment strategies, each word further emphasizing the class barriers that Miguel's innocent observation had exposed. Dr. Rodriguez asked pointed questions about Sterling Financial's commitment to fiduciary responsibility and stakeholder advocacy, her academic background evident in the precision of her inquiries. When James responded with generic assurances about maximizing returns, she pressed further, asking for specific examples of how the firm had balanced profitability with social responsibility in previous client relationships. Rebecca could see Thomas Chen taking detailed notes, but his expression suggested he was documenting concerns rather than positive impressions. The most telling moment came when Sister Catherine Murphy asked about Sterling Financial's understanding of income inequality and economic justice issues facing transportation workers. James looked genuinely confused by the question, responding that while social issues were certainly important, investment management was primarily about financial performance and risk mitigation. Rebecca felt compelled to intervene, explaining how pension fund management for public service workers required special consideration of job security, wage stability, and retirement timing that differed from traditional corporate environments. Miguel Santos listened intently to the discussion, his presence serving as a constant reminder of the real people whose financial futures would be affected by these investment decisions. When the conversation turned to fee structures and performance benchmarks, Miguel raised his hand tentatively and asked if he could pose a question from the employee perspective. "We work hard every day to serve our community," he said with quiet dignity, "and we trust that our retirement money will be handled by people who understand that this isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This is our family's security." Rebecca felt her throat tighten as Miguel spoke, knowing that his words perfectly captured the responsibility she felt toward every Chicago Metro Transit employee. James Morrison nodded politely, but immediately returned to discussing alpha generation and Sharpe ratios, demonstrating that Miguel's concern had barely registered in his consciousness. The contrast between Miguel's humanity and James's corporate detachment couldn't have been starker, and Rebecca could see that the Chicago Metro Transit team was drawing their own conclusions about Sterling Financial's cultural fit. As the presentation concluded, Patricia Williams thanked the visitors for their time and outlined the next steps in the selection process. The Chicago Metro Transit team responded with professional courtesy, but Rebecca noticed that they made no commitments about timing or follow-up meetings. Thomas Chen mentioned that they would be meeting with several other firms over the next few weeks, and Dr. Rodriguez added that their decision would be based on finding a partner who truly understood their mission and values. The handshake's goodbye carried the finality of a relationship that would never develop. Miguel paused when he reached Rebecca, his expression still showing puzzlement about her presence in this context. "It was nice meeting you officially," he said warmly. "I hope I'll still see you on the morning route." Rebecca assured him that she would continue riding Bus 47, though she wondered how much longer she could maintain her double life as the truth became increasingly difficult to conceal. After the Chicago Metro Transit team departed, the Sterling Financial conference room buzzed with post-presentation analysis. James Morrison dominated the conversation, declaring the meeting a success despite the obvious tension that had developed. "They seemed impressed by our credentials and track record," he announced confidently. "That little bus coincidence was actually perfect. It showed them that we understand their customer base at a ground level." Rebecca marveled at James's ability to reinterpret obvious failure as strategic victory. Patricia Williams appeared less optimistic, having enough experience with client meetings to recognize when cultural chemistry was absent. She pulled Rebecca aside after the debriefing session, her expression thoughtful and slightly concerned. "I appreciated your contributions today, especially the section about community impact," Patricia said carefully. "Your insights about transportation workers were very compelling, and I think the client team responded well to your authenticity." Rebecca thanked her for the feedback while wondering what Patricia had observed during the presentation. The weekend passed slowly as Rebecca contemplated the impossible situation she had created for herself. Monday morning brought the inevitable phone call from Thomas Chen to Patricia Williams, informing Sterling Financial that Chicago Metro Transit had decided to pursue other options for their pension fund management. Patricia shared the news during the weekly staff meeting, expressing disappointment, but noting that cultural fit was often as important as technical qualifications in institutional client relationships. James Morrison's reaction was predictably defensive, blaming the rejection on what he termed political correctness and suggesting that Chicago Metro Transit's decision-making process was influenced by irrelevant social factors rather than sound business judgment. "They probably chose some boutique firm that talks about social justice instead of focusing on returns," he grumbled, completely missing the irony that Rebecca was sitting 3 feet away from him. "These public sector clients sometimes prioritize feel-good policies over actual performance." Rebecca listened to James's analysis while checking her phone for messages from Chicago Metro Transit's management team. She had instructed them to select whichever investment firm demonstrated the best combination of technical competence and cultural alignment, without revealing her connection to Sterling Financial. The firm they had chosen specialized in socially responsible investing for municipal clients, with a track record of strong returns and deep commitment to stakeholder advocacy. Rebecca felt satisfied that her company's values had been protected, even though her own career situation was becoming increasingly complicated. Hey, beautiful souls. I need to pause here again because I can feel the anticipation building, and I know many of you are wondering how this incredible story resolves. I'm so grateful to have you here with me on this journey, and I want you to know that every single view, every comment, every moment you spend with our stories means the world to me. If you're feeling the same butterflies I am about what's coming next, please hit that subscribe button and join our family of storytellers who believe in the power of truth and justice. Share your own experiences in the comments about times when people underestimated you or when hidden truths changed everything. Your stories inspire the content I create and remind me why authentic storytelling matters so much. Now, let's see what happens when Rebecca's secret can no longer stay hidden. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected development that would force Rebecca's hand in ways she had never anticipated. As she settled into her usual seat on bus route 47, Miguel approached her with an expression of concern mixed with excitement. "Miss Rebecca," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something important about that meeting last Friday. After we left your office building, Dr. Rodriguez asked me about you, about whether I knew you personally from the bus route. I think they're trying to understand something about your company's culture." Rebecca's pulse quickened as she realized that the Chicago Metro Transit team was conducting their own investigation into Sterling Financial's character and values. Miguel continued, his voice dropping to ensure privacy from other passengers. "Dr. Rodriguez seemed very interested in how your colleagues treated you during the meeting, especially after that man made those comments about the bus. She asked me if I had ever noticed whether you seemed embarrassed or uncomfortable about taking public transportation." Miguel paused, studying Rebecca's face carefully. "I told her the truth, that you're always polite and respectful, and you seem proud of riding the bus, not ashamed of it." The implications hit Rebecca immediately. Chicago Metro Transit wasn't just evaluating Sterling Financial's technical qualifications. They were assessing the firm's cultural integrity by observing how employees treated each other, particularly around class and economic differences. James Morrison's condescending remarks about the bus coincidence had revealed exactly the kind of elitist attitudes that would make Chicago Metro Transit uncomfortable with Sterling Financial's approach to serving working families. Miguel's next words confirmed her suspicions. "Dr. Rodriguez also asked me about the other people from your company, whether they seem to understand or respect the work that bus drivers do. I had to be honest, that man who did most of the talking seemed like he thought he was better than everyone else in the room." Miguel shook his head with disapproval. "We deal with people like that sometimes, folks who act like taking the bus is beneath them. It's not a good look for a company that wants to handle our pension money." Rebecca thanked Miguel for sharing this information, knowing that his observations had probably influenced Chicago Metro Transit's decision to reject Sterling Financial's proposal. As the bus approached downtown, she made a decision that would change everything. "Miguel," she said carefully, "there's something I need to tell you, but I need your complete discretion. Can I trust you to keep a conversation between us?" Miguel nodded seriously, recognizing the gravity in her tone. "I'm not just a financial analyst who happens to ride your bus," Rebecca began, her heart pounding as she prepared to reveal her secret to the first person outside her legal team. "I'm actually the owner of Chicago Metro Transit. My grandfather left me the company 5 years ago, but I've been keeping my identity hidden while working at Sterling Financial to understand both sides of the business world." Miguel's eyes widened with shock, then narrowed with concentration as he processed this revelation. "You own the bus company?" Miguel whispered, glancing around to ensure no other passengers could overhear. "You're our boss, and you ride the bus to work every day?" Rebecca nodded, explaining briefly about her grandfather's philosophy of humble leadership and understanding all levels of society. Miguel sat quietly for several moments, then broke into a wide smile. "That explains so much," he said. "You always ask genuine questions about routes and schedules, and you listen when passengers complain about service issues. I thought you were just an unusually considerate rider." The bus reached Rebecca's stop, but she found herself reluctant to end this conversation that was reshaping her understanding of her own leadership approach. "Miguel," she said as she prepared to exit, I think it's time for me to stop hiding who I am. My colleagues' behavior during that presentation showed me that I can't represent a company that doesn't share our values. Would you be willing to meet with me this evening to discuss how we can improve things for drivers and passengers? Miguel agreed enthusiastically, and they arranged to meet at a coffee shop near the transit headquarters after his shift ended. Rebecca spent the rest of the day at Sterling Financial in a strange state of emotional detachment, knowing that she was preparing to leave this environment forever. During the lunch break, she overheard James Morrison on a phone call with a potential client, describing Sterling Financial as a firm that understands how to work with sophisticated investors who appreciate excellence and exclusivity. The contrast with Chicago Metro Transit's values of accessibility and community service couldn't have been clearer. That evening's meeting with Miguel opened Rebecca's eyes to issues she had never fully understood, despite years of riding public transportation. Miguel explained the daily challenges that drivers faced: aggressive passengers who took out their frustrations on bus operators, schedule pressures that made bathroom breaks nearly impossible, mechanical problems that weren't being addressed quickly enough, and a pay structure that hadn't kept pace with Chicago's rising cost of living. Most passengers are wonderful, Miguel clarified, but the difficult ones can make a 12-hour shift feel impossible, especially when we don't feel supported by management. Rebecca took detailed notes, realizing that her anonymous ownership structure had insulated her from the human details that made all the difference in employee satisfaction and service quality. Miguel also shared positive feedback from passengers who appreciated reliable service, clean buses, and courteous drivers, helping Rebecca understand that her company was making a real difference in people's daily lives. "You should be proud of what you've built," Miguel said earnestly. "Chicago Metro Transit is the best transit company I've ever worked for, and I've been driving buses for 22 years. The conversation continued for over 2 hours, covering everything from route optimization to driver training programs to passenger safety initiatives. Rebecca found herself energized by Miguel's insights and suggestions, remembering why she had fallen in love with the transportation business in the first place. This was real work that affected real people, not the abstract financial maneuvering that dominated her days at Sterling Financial. By the time they parted ways, Rebecca had made a decision that would surprise everyone who thought they knew her. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made every breath feel like a new beginning. Rebecca stood at the bus stop for what she knew would be her final ride as an anonymous passenger, carrying a resignation letter that would shock Patricia Williams and a business plan that would transform Chicago Metro Transit into a model for worker-owned cooperative transportation. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was about to resign from a job where her colleagues mocked her for taking the bus, only to reveal that she owned the entire bus system they had dismissed as beneath their consideration. Miguel's greeting carried extra warmth this morning, though he still didn't fully understand the magnitude of the changes Rebecca was about to implement. "Good morning, Miss Rebecca," he said with his characteristic smile. "Beautiful day to be riding the best transit system in Chicago, don't you think?" Rebecca laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks, knowing that Miguel's pride in his work would soon be rewarded in ways he couldn't imagine. "It certainly is, Miguel, and it's about to get even better." During the ride, Rebecca reviewed the letter she had drafted the night before, a carefully worded resignation that cited philosophical differences about community service and social responsibility without revealing the true reason for her departure. She had also prepared a press release announcing Chicago Metro Transit's new cooperative ownership structure, which would give employees significant stakes in the company while maintaining her controlling interest through the family trust. The plan would make Miguel and his colleagues part owners of the business they had dedicated their careers to building. The Sterling Financial Building loomed ahead one final time, its gleaming facade no longer representing aspiration, but rather a symbol of the superficial values Rebecca was choosing to leave behind. She watched her former colleagues emerging from their expensive cars, each one focused on their individual success without considering their collective impact on the community they served. James Morrison's Tesla sparkled in its premium parking spot, a monument to personal achievement that contributed nothing to the greater good. Rebecca's resignation meeting with Patricia Williams lasted exactly 15 minutes. Patricia expressed surprise and disappointment, offering to discuss salary increases and promotion opportunities that might change Rebecca's mind. When Rebecca explained that her decision was based on fundamental value differences rather than financial considerations, Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "This is about the Chicago Metro Transit presentation, isn't it?" Patricia asked perceptively. "I know James's comments were inappropriate, but surely we can address those issues through sensitivity training." Rebecca smiled sadly, realizing that Patricia genuinely didn't understand how deep the cultural problems ran throughout the organization. "It's not about one presentation or one person's comments," Rebecca explained gently. "It's about an entire worldview that sees people like Miguel Santos as somehow less worthy of respect than people who drive expensive cars. I can't continue working for a company that doesn't share my values about human dignity and community service." The news of Rebecca's resignation spread through Sterling Financial like wildfire, generating speculation and gossip that revealed more about her colleagues' character than they realized. James Morrison declared that Rebecca had probably found a job at a second-tier firm that better matched her limited ambitions, while Sarah Chen wondered aloud whether Rebecca had finally realized she needed to get serious about her career. David Park suggested that Rebecca's bus-riding habits had probably hurt her professional credibility, making it difficult for her to advance at a prestigious firm like Sterling Financial. By Thursday afternoon, Rebecca was sitting in the Chicago Metro Transit headquarters conference room, addressing the full board of directors as their revealed owner for the first time. The room buzzed with excitement and curiosity as employees who had known her only as a passenger learned that she had been quietly observing and planning improvements to their working conditions. Miguel Santos sat at the table with wide eyes, still processing the reality that his morning bus passenger was actually his ultimate boss. "For the past 5 years," Rebecca began, "I've had the privilege of learning this business from the ground up, literally from the passenger seat. I've seen how hard you work, how much you care about serving our community, and how little recognition you receive for the essential service you provide. Today, I want to announce changes that will ensure your dedication is rewarded with ownership stakes in the company you've helped build." The cooperative ownership plan she outlined would transfer 20% of Chicago Metro Transit to employees through a performance-based equity program, with additional shares available through profit sharing and long-term service bonuses. Drivers like Miguel would become part owners of their routes. Mechanics would own stakes in maintenance operations, and administrative staff would share in the company's financial success. The plan preserved Rebecca's controlling interest while creating genuine wealth-building opportunities for every employee. Dr. Rodriguez raised practical questions about implementation timelines and legal structures, while Thomas Chen focused on the financial implications for operations and expansion plans. Sister Catherine Murphy applauded the social justice aspects of the ownership transition, noting that employee-owned businesses typically showed higher job satisfaction and better community engagement. Miguel listened intently to the technical discussions, occasionally asking clarifying questions about how the ownership program would affect day-to-day operations. The meeting concluded with unanimous board approval for the cooperative transition, pending legal review and employee ratification. Rebecca felt a sense of completion that had been missing from her work at Sterling Financial, knowing that she was building something lasting and meaningful rather than simply accumulating personal wealth. As the board members filed out, Miguel approached her with an expression of gratitude mixed with amazement. "I still can't believe this is real," Miguel said, shaking his head with wonder. "Yesterday, I was just a bus driver complaining about schedule pressures, and today I'm going to be a part owner of the company. My wife is never going to believe this story." Rebecca smiled, thinking about all the other unbelievable stories that would emerge as Chicago Metro Transit's transformation became public knowledge. The press conference announcing the cooperative ownership structure drew significant media attention, particularly when reporters learned that the mysterious owner had been riding her own buses to work every day while employed at one of Chicago's most prestigious investment firms. The story became a sensation on social media, with thousands of people sharing their own experiences of being underestimated or judged based on superficial appearances. James Morrison called Rebecca's phone 17 times during the press conference, finally reaching her just as the last reporter finished asking questions. "Rebecca, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice carrying a mixture of shock and anger. "The news is saying you own Chicago Metro Transit? The same company we just pitched to last week? This has to be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding." Rebecca's response was calm and measured, reflecting the peace she felt about her decision. "There's no mistake, James. I've owned Chicago Metro Transit for 5 years, and I've been riding my own buses to work every morning while listening to you and our colleagues make jokes about my transportation choices. Yesterday, I decided I couldn't continue working for a company that doesn't respect the dignity of working people." The silence on James's end of the call lasted nearly 30 seconds as he processed the complete reversal of everything he thought he knew about Rebecca's circumstances. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a humility that Rebecca had never heard before. "I owe you an enormous apology," he said quietly. "I've been incredibly wrong about everything, and I'm sorry for treating you the way I did. I never imagined. I mean, you own a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and you never said anything." Rebecca's final words to James Morrison captured the lesson she hoped he would learn from this experience. "The problem wasn't that I owned something valuable, James. The problem was that you assumed I didn't have value because I made different choices than you would make." Miguel Santos has been driving buses for 22 years, supporting his family and serving his community with pride and dignity. His worth as a human being doesn't depend on what kind of car he drives or how much money he makes, and neither does mine. 6 months later, Chicago Metro Transit had become a national model for cooperative business ownership, with delegations from other cities visiting to study their employee equity programs and community engagement initiatives. Miguel Santos had been promoted to a regional supervisor position while maintaining his ownership stake and continuing to drive his favorite routes. Rebecca split her time between strategic planning for the transportation company and consulting with other businesses interested in transitioning to cooperative ownership structures. The final irony came when Sterling Financial lost 3 major clients who cited concerns about the firm's cultural sensitivity and community engagement after the Chicago Metro Transit story became widely known. Patricia Williams reached out to Rebecca several times, asking if she would consider returning as a partner with equity stakes and unlimited authority to reshape the company's values and practices. Rebecca declined politely, explaining that she had found her true calling in building businesses that served communities rather than simply generating profits for shareholders. Rebecca's story became a testament to the power of humility, patience, and authentic leadership, proving that real success often comes from understanding every level of an organization and treating every person with dignity and respect. Her grandfather's philosophy of humble service had guided her through years of mockery and misunderstanding, ultimately revealing that the strongest leaders are often those who choose to blend in rather than stand out, who listen more than they speak, and who measure their worth by the positive impact they create rather than the recognition they receive. The watch that had once symbolized her hidden identity now represented transparency and authentic leadership, marking time in a life dedicated to proving that true power comes from lifting others up rather than putting them down, and that the most satisfying victories are those that benefit entire communities rather than individual egos. Rebecca had learned that being underestimated was not a burden to bear, but a gift that allowed her to see clearly, while others remained blind to the possibilities that surrounded them every single day.